Okay, good morning everybody, and Chazak Arie. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful Thursday morning as we are studying together Perashat Re'eh. Perashat Re'eh, Rabotai, is an amazing perasha, like all of them, and it really has a lot of amazing lessons. And today I would like to study with you from our perasha. So here we go. Okay, so let's open up. Let's just find the pasuk. If you have a chumash, let's open up to the mitzvah of Tzedakah. Okay, it's going to be. Sorry, I just lost it. Here we go. Chapter 15, pasuk 7. Okay. Chapter 15, pasuk 7, the pasuk says, Ki hiye becha evyon me'ahad achecha. If there is a needy person among you, be'ahad she'arecha, one of your kinsmen in one of your settlements, be'artzecha, in the land, asher Adonai Elohecha noten lach, that the Lord has given you, lo te'ametz et levavecha, do not harden your heart, ve'lo tikpot et yadecha, do not shut your hand, me'ahicha evyon, against your needy kinsman. Rather, you must open your hand and lend him de mahsoro, sufficient, asher yihsar lo, for whatever he needs. Here the Torah is encouraging us on the mitzvah of tzedakah. Ki patoach tiftach et yadecha lo, the famous words, we shall open our hands to those who are needy. Rabotai, there is a Gemara in Masechet Baba Batra, and the Gemara tells us about a rabbi whose name was Rav Papa. Okay, Rav Papa was one time climbing up a ladder, and very close to the top, Gemara, this is page 10a, the Gemara tells us that right as he gets to the top, one of the rungs in the ladder breaks, and he nearly slips and falls to his death. Rav Papa is very afraid when this happens. He quickly comes down and he is safe. And after coming back to safety, to a safe landing, he remarks and he says, I don't understand. How did I almost die such a crazy death of falling? We know Beit Din administers 4 types of capital punishment. One of them is called sekila. Sekila is where the guy is thrown off a high level, a roof or some type of thing. And falling from a ladder is very similar to the death of sekila. Rav Papa, who is now doing some introspection, he says, I can't believe that I nearly died the death of sekila, falling from a ladder. I never committed idolatry. I never broke Shabbat. Why would Hashem nearly kill me through this form of sekila? Chiya bar Rav was there, a different rabbi, and he says back to Rav Papa, well, maybe Rabbi, you were lax and negligent in charity, in tzedakah. Because if you were, then the punishment is indeed fair that you should fall from a ladder. That's very interesting. The obvious question is, since when is charity punishable by falling from a ladder? What's the connection? Not giving tzedakah is not punishable by sekila. Why does one connect to the other? And the Gaon Mevilna, he brings one of his most famous chidushim. We know that we learn a lot, not only from the words, not only from the nikudot, we could even learn from the te'amim, the tune. And many times we've given shiurim based on that. From the Gaon Mevilna, he was known to do this. We've given different psukim in the past, explaining them. And one of the more famous ones from the Gaon Mevilna is in our pasuk, the mitzvah of tzedakah. Says the Gaon Mevilna, take a look at the word patoach tiftach. Give charity. What's the tune? What are the te'amim under the words patoach tiftach? If you look in the pasuk, it says, Ki patoach tiftach et yadecha lo. Ve'ha'abet ha'abiten, right? Patoach tiftach is a darga tebir. Patoach tiftach darga tebir. Okay, anyone that either you bar mitzvah or you heard your brother practicing for his bar mitzvah, so you know all the tunes and the trup, right? This is called, it's a dargah tebir. Now that to us is just like do re mi, dargah tebir. However, they actually mean something, those two words. Dargah, and if you look in it, it's like a squiggly line. It looks like the letter Z. It looks like a staircase. The dargah not only looks like a staircase, but the word dargah means madregot. Be'eze dargahu. What level are you on? What step are you on? So madregot, dargah is a stair. If you speak Arabic, dirje, okay? That's a step. Dargah is a step, and tebir, what does tebir mean? Anyone know? Actually, if you don't speak Aramaic, a lot of times there's an easy cheat. All you got to do is change the tav to a shin. They're very interchangeable between Aramaic and Hebrew. So I'll give you an example. How do you say ox in Hebrew? Anyone know? An ox is a shor. Shin vavresh. Now the Gemara doesn't use the word shor, it uses the word, if you switch the shin and the tav, tor. Okay? It's very actually noteworthy that in Latin, the way to say an ox is taurus. Okay, they got that from Aramaic. Latin is an extension of that. And so if anyone is a Taurus in the horoscope or whatever it is, so that is the word shor and tor, interchangeable. Well, how do you say to break in Hebrew? Shabir, lishbor. Well, in Aramaic, the way to say break is tabar, tebir. So dargah tebir means the steps break. Says the Gaon Mevilna, because Rav Papa was negligent in his tzedakah, dargah tebir. Patoach tiftach dargah tebir. The ladder under him nearly slipped and he almost fell to his death. Now, that is a nearly tragic story, but I would like to share with you an actual tragic story that happened to one of the greatest leaders in Jewish history. It's a story that maybe we heard of, but today I would like to see it inside. It's about David HaMelech. The story is brought down in Masechet Shabbat, page 30a. The pasuk says in Tehillim, Hodi'eni Adonai kitzi umidat yamai maihi. Says David HaMelech, Lord, make me to know my end and the measure of my days. Amar David Livnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What exactly did David want to know when he asks for his end? David says to Hashem, Ribono shel olam, Master of the universe, Hodi'eni Adonai kitzi. I would like to know how old I will be when I die. What are the measure of my days? Will I be 90, 100, 120? I just want to know. God said back, Amar lo gezerahi melefanai she'en modi'in kitzo shebazar v'dam. Sorry, we can't give that information, David. We don't do that here. Okay? Umidat yamai maihi. David continues and he says, okay, at least can I know what day of the week I'm going to die? Amar lo b'Shabbat tamut. God says, okay, you will die on Shabbat. So David didn't want to die on Shabbat. He knew how holy Shabbat was and how beautiful Shabbat was. He said, Amut be'ehad b'Shabbat. He says, God, could I push it to Sunday? Amar lo, God says, I can't push you to Sunday because your son Shlomo is going to be king already from Saturday night and your kingships cannot overlap. So he said, okay, that's fair enough. How about Friday? I'll give up a day of my life. Just I don't want to die on Shabbat. And Hashem responded, Kitov yom b'hatzarecha me'alef. God says to him, one day, David, of your learning is more valuable to me than 1,000 sacrifices that your son Solomon is going to bring. So by the way, if we ever feel bad that we don't have the Bet HaMikdash, we should always remind ourselves of this pasuk. One day of Torah learning is more precious to Hashem than 1,000 korbanot that Solomon was going to bring, Shlomo was going to bring in the Bet HaMikdash. Well, the Gemara says, David HaMelech now has somewhat of an inside information. He knows he's going to die on a Shabbat. So David plays the Torah card. Kol Yom Ad Shabta, every Saturday, Avayativ, he would sit and learn all day long. He would sit and learn all day long. Because he knew that if he's learning, he's connected to the source of Torah, which is the source of life, then the angel of death has no hold on him. That day that he was supposed to die arrived, and the Kamalach HaMavet, the angel of death, comes, Velo Yachile, and all of a sudden he cannot approach David. David's learning. He has this shield, this iron dome of Torah around him. Amar Ma'avidle, the angel of death says, what do I do now? I have to kill David, but he's untouchable. Havale bustena ahare bete. David had a garden behind his house. Atta malach mavet, the angel of death had a good idea. He came, Salik, he climbed, ubahish beilane, he started shaking the trees. Of course, these are very deep, stories in the Gemara, but we're just reading it right now on face value. And the angel started shaking the trees. Nafak lemehzeh, David HaMelech went out to see what's going on. As he started going at the stairs, Salik bedarga. What's darga, everybody? Darga, stair. He started climbing the stairs to go outside and see. Ibhit darga mitute. The stair broke under him. Ishtik venah nafshe. And he was silent. And at that moment that he stopped learning, for that split second that he fell, came and caught him, and he died. And this is the tragic story of how David HaMelech passed away. And the story is brought in Masechet Shabbat, because it's the laws of Shabbat. It deals over here with mukseh, things that we're not allowed to move on Shabbat. And the question that Shlomo had was, how do I now deal with my father? What should I do? He's out in the sun. The dogs are hungry. A lot of deep, there's a beautiful Ben Ish Chai over here. We're not going to go into right now. But Rabotai, there's something very interesting that we notice when we read this story, and that is that David died through a Dargat Tebir episode. David died specifically through a step breaking under him. And the question that we want to ask ourselves and we wonder is, where was David guilty of not giving tzedakah? According to the Gaon Mevilna, Patoach tiftach. If you open your hand, then you're going to, if you don't open your hand, then Dargat Tebir. And where is David guilty of not giving charity? So I'd like to turn for a minute to a pasuk in Chronicles, Divrei Hayamim. I don't know if you ever read Chronicles. It's very, very nice to read. It repeats a lot of the stories from the Tanakh, but a lot of times there's more information that we get here that we didn't get the first time around. We all know David HaMelech wanted to build the Beit HaMikdash, but Hashem said no. Why did Hashem say no? Anyone know why David couldn't build it? Pasuk in Divrei Hayamim, chapter 22, pasuk 8. Vahi alai devar Adonai lemor. God says to David, Dam larov shafachta. You spilled a lot of blood. You made a lot of wars. You will not build a house for me because you killed so many people. You will have a child. He will be a man of tranquility and peace. There will be peace in his days. Shelomo yihiyeh shemo. His name will be Solomon. What's the root of the word Shelomo? Shalom. Shalom vasheket eten al Yisrael beyamav, the pasuk says. There will be peace. There will be quiet for the Jewish people in his days. Hu yivneh bayit lishmi. He will build a house for me. Vehu yihir li leben. He will be for me a child, and I will be for him a father. His throne will be established. And David HaMelech is telling all of this to his son Solomon. I could not build it. However, you will build it. And question number one, why is David killing the enemy a crime? Why is that a bad thing? Why should he be penalized for that and not be allowed to build a Beit HaMikdash? That's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. We should thank David for that. That should be a reason to build it. Because you killed the Resha'im. You killed all our enemies. Why is he being penalized for not that he can't build a Beit HaMikdash? Because he killed the enemy. Okay. Question number two. There's a pasuk over here that's very hard to understand. And actually, I saw an interpretation to this pasuk quoted by Rabbi Bernstein, but not Rabbi Emanuel Bernstein. That's who we always quote. But I was introduced yesterday to his father. Okay, Rabbi Isaac Bernstein. Somebody sent me a video of his. He also has online recorded shiurim. Very, 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 very interesting stuff. And he over here quotes a pasuk in Chronicles 22:14. Vehine be'oni, and in my poor days, hachinoti lebet Hashem, says David to his son, I prepared a house for God. Zahav kikarim me'a elif. 100,000 talents of silver. Vekesef, and silver, elef alafim, millions of talents of silver. 100,000 talents of gold, millions of talents of silver. Vilenachoshet vilabarzel, and gold, a copper and bronze, in mishkal, not measurable, because there's so much. And wood, and stones. I prepared all of this, my son Solomon, for you to build the Beit HaMikdash for Hashem. Okay, very nice. Asks Rav Yonatan Eifshitz, Vehine be'oni, in my poor days, we should all be so poor. We should all be this poor that we should have millions of talents of silver and hundreds of thousands of talents of gold. How could David HaMelech call himself poor? And he quotes an answer from Rav Yonatan Eifshitz. Rav Yonatan Eifshitz brings a Gemara in Masechet Berachot. Rabotai, it's an amazing Gemara. Gemara on page 6. Keshelamod HaShahar, every morning at dawn, I don't know if you knew this, David was a harp player, first of all, he was a musician. David placed a harp on top of his bed. Now, I don't know exactly the physics of this, how this worked, but every midnight there was a wind that would come by and it would play against the strings of the harp and it would wake David HaMelech up. Okay? Today we call that an alarm clock, but back then they didn't have alarm clocks. So what would David do? He would wake up middle of the night by this harp that was over his bed. Beautiful. So David would go to sleep, let's say 8 p.m. I don't know, whatever time he went to sleep. And he would wake up at midnight and he would learn all night long. At the break of dawn, Keshe'ala Amud HaShahar, Gemara says, Nichnesu Chachmei Yisrael David. All of the elders of Israel would come into David's bedroom and they would say, Amecha Yisrael tzirichim parnasa, our King David, your people need money. There's a famine. Help us. What would David say back? Amar, Peshtu yedechem bagedud. You need money? All right, go to war. Go get it from the enemy. The enemy has a lot of money and resources. Go get it from them. What do you want me to tell you? And the Gemara says they did this every single day. And asks Rav Yonatan Eibshitz in his Sefer Ya'arot Evash, I don't understand. Why are they coming every single day? You already know what he told you yesterday. His answer is not going to change. Why would his answer change? If yesterday he told you to go to war, so today, guess what the answer is going to be? Go to war. Okay? You don't, right? Einstein's definition of insanity. Don't ask him the same question again and again and again. Expect a different answer. Why are you expecting a different answer? Why are they asking him every single day the same exact question? Hey, we need money. Okay, I told you yesterday, go to war. V'yesh lehavin ma bikshu David. What did they want from David already? What kind of new answer were they expecting? Answers of Yonatan Eibshitz, based on this pasuk that we just read. Va'ani be'oni hachinoti lebet Hashem, where David says, in my poor days, I had all this money. Where did David get that money from? Says the Midrash, Kesheharag leGoliath, when David killed Goliath, Hishlichu alav benot Israel kesef vezahav. All the girls would throw all the money at him. Gold and silver, right? All the girls. They were so impressed with what David did. Okay, they threw money at him. By the way, who else did this happen to? Not me. Who else did this happen to? This happened to Yosef. Remember Yosef, when he would walk, all the women would throw their jewelry just so they could look at him. When David defeated Goliath, all the girls threw their gold and silver at him. And all of a sudden, David took all this money, and what did he do with it? Vehu hifrishan lebet hamikdash. David separated all the money for the Bet Hamikdash. V'kshehaya ra'av ba'aretz, and when there was a famine, lo patach otzarot lechalkel aniyim. David did not open and take from that money to give to the poor. That was the question of all of these elders. Every morning, David, there's a famine and you have money. You're saving it for the Bet HaMikdash, but at the end of the day, there's poor people. They need the money. And you know what David says? Sorry, we're not touching that money. That money is money that I'm saving for the Bet HaMikdash. You need money, go out to war. And Hashem, look at this, only Rav Yonatan Eibshitz could say this. Ulkach katzaf alav Hashem, and God got angry at David. Ve'amar, and he said, Tovat tzedakah m'binyan Bet HaMikdash. Charity to the poor is more important than the Bet HaMikdash. Wow. Wow. What are you saving for the building of a temple? Poor is more important. V'lekach ata lo tivnei, and therefore you will not build. When God says to David, the reason you can't build it is because you have blood on your hands. It's not the blood of the enemy. It's all of those soldiers that you send into the battle on those optional wars that you didn't need to fight. All those wars that you could have taken the money from the temple, but instead you decided to take it from the enemy. Those wars, those Jewish bodies that were killed for no reason. Yes, you need money, go to war. It's a king's right. A king is allowed to decide for the welfare of the economy and society. That's also pikuach nefesh. And you go to battle. It's actually very interesting. I'm reading in a book, Headlines. I'm not sure if you ever heard of it, but it's a book written by Rav David Lichtenstein. Okay, he's a businessman, a very wealthy one, and he's also a scholar. And he has these books that are called Headlines. 1, 2, 3, right? Headlines 1, headlines 2, headline 3. He just came out with the third volume. I just purchased it recently, where he discusses the book. The purpose of the book is discussing contemporary issues through the halachic lens. So as an example, COVID, everyone shut down. Okay? It's understandable. Protecting people from catching it. It's an infectious disease. With time, though, governments realize that we can't stay closed forever. People are suffocating. The economy is dying. We got to start opening up. Now, the more you open up, it's like a seesaw. The more you open up, the more people will catch it, the bigger of a chance people will die. And governments understood that that's possible, but it's a risk they were willing to take. Every government, at a different stage. And the question was that he discusses, one of the questions in this book, is what is halakha's opinion on such a thing? Are we allowed to risk people's lives by opening up for the sake of welfare of the economic welfare of a community or a country? And one of the proofs was from this Gemara, that David HaMelech would send people out to battle. That was part of his right as a king. What right do you have to kill innocent soldiers, to send them into the front line of battle? What right does David have to do that? The answer is they need money. And when you need money for the society to continue and function, that is also a pikuach nefesh. That's also life and death in a way. Either way, not getting too much into the detail, Hashem was very angry at David for not taking the money from the proceeds of the temple. Velekach ata lo tibnei, and therefore you will not build it. And that's what the elders were hoping every day. David, did you change your mind? Could we take from the funds? Could we take from the treasure house? David says, no, that's not being touched. Unbelievable. That's what David says, Vehine be'oni. That's what it means. It was through it was at the sacrifice, at the expense of the aniyim, that I collected all of that gold and silver. Not I was gold. Va'ani be'oni. Says David HaMelech, Vehine, through the aniyim, at their expense, I was able to collect all of the gold and silver. And David ended up having to pay for it. Unbelievable. And by the way, I want you to know something. There is a Radak in Melachim. If you go to the book of Kings, chapter 7. Here we go. Whatever ended up happening to all that money that David stored? He told his son to use it, right? Well, where do you think it went? Rabotai, take a look. It's a very tragic pasuk. It's the last pasuk of chapter 7 of the book of Kings. Vatishlam kol ha-melacha. All of the work was done. Shlomo built the Beit HaMikdash. Chazak Baruch, Mabruk, Mazal Tov. Look at this. Vayaveh Shlomo et kodshei David aviv. And Shlomo brought all of the money that David had sanctified, the kesef, the silver, the zahav, the gold, the vessels. And what did he do with them? Natan be'otzrot bet Hashem. He placed them in the storehouse, in the treasure house of the Beit HaMikdash. The commentaries all ask, whoa, what do you mean? You didn't use the gold and silver? Your father specifically designated that to use for the Beit HaMikdash. The pasuk says that when he was done building the Beit HaMikdash, he took it and he put it in hiding. He put it in the savings. Why didn't he use it? Unbelievable. Rabotai, take a look at this. Rashi and the Radak, they both quote the following midrash. Kach amar Shlomo, this is what Solomon said to himself. Ra'av haya bimei aviv. There was a famine in my father's days. Shalosh shanim, 3 years. Shana ahar shana, year after year. Vehaya lo lebazbez. David should have used that money of Hekdesh. Le'ahayot bahen aniyei Yisrael. To revive those poor people. David said, Shlomo says, my father didn't do it. That money is treif money. It's pasul money. I cannot use it for the Beit HaMikdash because it came at the expense of poor people. God is not proud of that money. Wow, that is a very frightening midrash. So Rabotai, we now go back, and this time, without a happy ending to the story, we understand why it was that David HaMelech died the way that he did. How did David die? The step fell under him. Dargat Hebir. When a person is negligent in Tzedakah, that is the price that one needs to pay. David HaMelech, where was he lax? And again, God for us to ever judge David HaMelech, God forbid. But this is what the Midrash says. This is what the Ya'arot Evash says. Our rabbis are reminding us how careful we have to be. You know, and this is David saving for what? He's not saving for iPad or for another house. He's saving for a house for Hashem. Imagine how careful we have to be. Yes, we should all have savings. Yes, we cannot give more than a certain amount, but to be very careful that we are giving the amount that we should. David was censored and criticized for saving for the Beit HaMikdash. There is a story that I remember. I still till today can't believe what I heard every time I repeat this story. The story is about the Chafetz Chaim. They say the Chafetz Chaim used to have an extra suit. Wherever he went, he would carry a suit with him just so that if he would hear the shofar from Mashiach, he would be able to greet Melech HaMashiach in a special suit. That was the emunah of the Chafetz Chaim, that Mashiach was coming, and he would prepare by always taking this extra bag with him. When I saw this is me, Ariel Mizrahi, I met the Chafetz Chaim's grandson, Rabbi Zaks. I think he lives in Borough Park. His grandson married my wife's first cousin. So at one of the family events, I was at the Sebit and I saw Rabbi Zaks. And I asked him that story. I said, did you ever verify that story? Is it a true story? Did he really go everywhere with a suit bag, a suit garment? And Rabbi Zaks smiled. He chuckled and he said, I want to tell you something. If my grandfather had an extra $100 for a suit, he would give it to the poor. He wouldn't hold on to it to buy an extra piece of clothing. That is the Midrash. David HaMelech, you're saving money for Mashiach, you're saving it for the Beit HaMikdash, but there's Aniyim now, give it now. Now again, that doesn't mean that we should sell our Mashiach suit that we have, okay? We have a lot of other things that we should sell first. Baruch Hashem, we're not on the level to have to worry about that. We have 3 homes, we have 8 cars, we have a lot of other things that we should first sell before our Mashiach suit. What an amazing idea. What a scary musar. Rabotai, just to understand the rationale behind it. You know, I understand the what. The stair and it falls and it makes a lot of sense. But sorry, I see how it's true. David HaMelech and Rav Papa. But why? Is there a philosophy? Is there something rational to it? Why should that be the punishment of somebody who doesn't give tzedakah? You told me the what, but what's the why? Says Rav Yosef Tzvi Salant. Says the Be'er Yosef, someone that we quote often. Why? You know why? Why is it that someone doesn't give tzedakah? Pasuk says, Rash ve'ish techachim nifgashu. Poor man and rich man, they meet up. Why is it that the rich man has a hard time giving money to the poor man? One of the thoughts that the rich man can have is my money. I worked hard to get to the level that I'm at. I worked very hard to reach where I am today. I should give from my hard-earned money to you? I'm up here and you're down there. And says the Be'er Yosef, you think you're up there through your own efforts? Who put you up there? You're not smarter than other people. You're not more talented than other people. There's a lot of smarter and more talented that are not as wealthy as you. You know why you're here? Because I put you there. And God says the same way I put you here, the level that you're on could break in 1 second and you can lose everything. And how did we not see that so clearly than in Corona? People that had such secure parnasa, such guaranteed businesses, real estate in the best locations, it's guaranteed money like clockwork, impossible for something to ever happen to my money and to my business. And all of a sudden a pandemic hits the world. Nothing is secure. The only security we have is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When a person feels a little bit haughty, a person feels arrogant, it's my money. I made it. I earned it. Why should I give it? So someone that thinks like that, the punishment is Dargat Tebir. Hashem reminds them, you didn't make it up here by yourself. I brought you up here and I could take you down in a second. We should always remain humble. What was written on the side of the Titanic? The ship that even God cannot sink. Didn't even make one voyage. We should never feel like we are invincible. Matter of fact, it was Shlomo HaMelech himself that had a ring that had on it 3 words, Gam ze ya'avor. This too will pass. Whenever Shlomo was having a bad day, he would look at it and he would remind himself, don't worry, it'll pass, better days will come, your popularity will go back up, it'll be okay, just smile. Tomorrow's a new day, your friends will forget, people will forgive, it's okay, it's fine, you'll manage, just keep going. And if Chaz v'Shalom he ever had a day that he was feeling great and arrogant, he would quickly look at his ring, Gam ze ya'avor, and he would remind himself, Shlomo, be careful. You're high today, you're up on top, but in 1 second the wheel can turn. And you can be back on the bottom. And we can lose everything. We can be famous, we can be wealthy, we can be so popular, and we can lose it all in 1 second. We should never let that arrogance get to us. And so that is, I think, something that's very noteworthy, something that we should always remind ourselves. Take a look at what Hashem's opinion is when it comes to charity versus the Beit HaMikdash. God says there's poor people is more important than even the Beit HaMikdash. We should be zocheh to fulfill the mitzvah of tzedakah the right way, and by doing so, we will also merit what the Rambam writes. The Rambam writes in the laws of Matanot Aniyim. He has laws codifying how to give charity. The Rambam says we should be more careful in charity than any positive commandment. More careful than any positive commandment. And he says, and that's why Avraham was so blessed. And if you give charity, it's a sign of the seed of Abraham. And Mashiach and the Geulah only comes through charity. Ve'en Yisrael niga'alin ela b'tzedakah. And the redemption will only come in the merit of the mitzvah of tzedakah. Like the Pasuk says, Sion b'mishpat Tipadeh. Zion will be redeemed through Veshaviha Tzedakah. It will be returned through charity. We should be zocheh to the Geulah Shelema through this mitzvah of charity. B'mehera b'yameinu. Amen. We'll stop over here. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.